Steven Spielberg was casting for a movie called Little Rascals. Some of you might have seen it. And as you know, I got the job. I had never auditioned for a movie before. I had a big open call. I grew up watching the original Our Gang, and I had a pretty good Alfalfa impersonation, and I cut my rat's tail off. And I just remember right then, very consciously, just being so overwhelmed with joy. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. This is all I want to do. I want to just be right here. But shortly after that day, a week, 2 weeks, I don't really know exactly how long, two men from that set began using me.
Brandon Hall, who was nicknamed Bug by his family, was born February 4th, 1985 in Fort Worth, Texas. When Bug was very small, his father was arrested and his parents divorced. Twyla ran a daycare center out of their home, and Bug helped with his younger siblings. There weren't a lot of channels to watch on television back then, and it could be difficult to decide on a channel between siblings and other neighborhood kids, but everyone in Bug's household agreed on the original Our Gang series. Bug was already an entertainer at a young age, and would do alfalfa impressions to help keep things light and fun for his mother and the other kids. So when there was an open call audition for the Little Rascals within driving distance, Twyla naturally wanted Bug to have the opportunity to try out. He of course landed the role, and became a child superstar overnight. Bug's life changed forever.
You are so beautiful to me.
I knew that if I did ever come out and talk about this, I wanted to just tell the truth. And the truth actually took some time for me to work out. So here we are 5-6 months later. This is the longest 5-6 months that I've gone without working since I was 8 years old. I've just taken the time to talk to a lot of people that I consider wise. Some good friends of mine. They've been generous enough to lend me their time and lend me their ears and help me work through my own thoughts on this. So,
in this heartbreaking testimonial he uploaded to his channel after his shocking arrest in 2020, he talks about the series of events leading up to this troubling self-escapist behavior. He begins by explaining how he'd been predisposed to abuse by his own father, and that this made him a vulnerable target, as if those with such an affliction have heightened senses to detect this pre-existing wound in children and are able to exploit it.
So I grew up in Texas, a normal kid, and what very few people, nobody at the time certainly knew, was that my biological father had been abusing me for a long time, for a few years. He eventually went to prison for those same crimes against someone else's kid. And I just went on with my life. And then Steven Spielberg was casting for a movie called Little Rascals. Some of you might have seen it. And as you know, I got the job. I had never auditioned for a movie before. I had a big open call. I grew up watching the original Our Gang, and I had a pretty good Alfalfa impersonation, and I cut my rat's tail off. It was the early 90s. And I went in and got the job. So I remember at the time, even kind of consciously, I remember thinking, like, I felt liberated. I felt like I had been removed from, the kind of horrors or the emotional distraught I had over where I was and what I had been through. And that grew exponentially as the process went on after, all the table reads and the wardrobe fittings and weeks of rehearsal. my excitement just continued to grow and grow and grow. And I remember the very first day of filming. I still have this crystal clear memory. I remember strutting into my honey wagon, just a big trailer with all the smaller trailer cubicles, for the actors to get dressed in, and it all just felt right. I remember being like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and everyone was so kind and so generous. And I walked to set, the second AD or third AD, whoever it was, rushed me to set, and the first scene we were filming was the scene where me and Travis, Spanky, stole the washing machine engine for the go-kart, for the Blur 2. And so I'm in like overalls or whatever, and they put us in the little laundry room, and they close the door, and they start filling it up with bubbles, right? They put in this big tube, and it's just pumping bubbles in. Suds are filling up to here. And I just remember right then, very consciously, just being so overwhelmed with joy. And I remember thinking, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. This is all I want to do. I want to just be right here. And that never faded. That's still how I feel about my work. Whether it's acting or writing or my work as a development executive. I love storytelling. But shortly after that day, a week, 2 weeks, I don't really know exactly how long, two men from that set began really abusing me. And I've thought a lot about that. I've thought a lot about how these predators have some sort of sixth sense for vulnerable kids, right? Or predators of other kinds, having a sixth sense for just vulnerable people.
His little brother Gemini Barnett had also secured a small uncredited role in the Little Rascals, which allowed his career to take off simultaneously. Their mother Twyla, now fully immersing herself into the business, attending seminars and workshops, taking her other children to auditions. In her need to be more attentive to his younger siblings, she put her trust in Spielberg and his production team to look out for Bug. He doesn't mention if by the same people, but he did mention this particularly disturbing kind of attention he was receiving followed him from movie to movie for several years. He had appeared in The Big Green in 1995, written and directed by Holly Goldberg Sloan, produced by Disney, about a team of Texas misfits being coached as a soccer team by a teacher from England, also starring Patrick Renna and Chauncey Leopardi, who'd filmed Sandlot together in 1993. That's not to say that all these repeatedly used child stars within certain circles were all being exploited in some form. The best we can do is map out the potential of harm when basing off a victim's alleged recollection of events without anyone having been proven guilty in the court of law. However, Disney has had a tendency to be ever forgiving when it comes to allowing convicted predators to work on productions that involve kids, or, in the very least, allowed them in close enough proximity to kids who were working on adjacent sets within the same studio. Such is the case with Brian Peck, who went on to work as an acting and vocal coach for the cast of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody on the Disney Channel, right after being released from prison for his crimes against a young Drake Bell, while working with Peck on Nickelodeon's now notorious Dan Schneider-created shows, which in hindsight we now realize were hiding fetish and filth under the guise of kids' humor.
In 2004, actor Brian Peck was convicted of having sex with a child, but has since worked on the kids' show The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Do you like the design?
3 words. Hit the us.
And anger management.
You got to realize how many studios may have protected people that they knew what they were doing wrong, that knew it, should have got rid of them a long time ago.
Then there was director Victor Salva, which they've done a mighty fine job of covering up as he went on to be a great success in his creation of the still popular horror film series, Jeepers Creepers, in which he directed 3 out of 4 films.
I also accidentally worked with a pedophile, but I bet you have too.
You accidentally worked with a
Pedophile, and nobody told me.
Who
The
was
manager or the agents didn't tell me. It was a man named Victor Salva who's on the registry, and I gave an interview right when I started that movie, but about the second day or first day of filming, I gave it like when we were in pre-production, before the movie starts, a man came out yelling in the neighborhood about files, and I didn't know what he was, like, what? And I asked, and I was like, what? Oh, like, he's just mad that they didn't hire him to work on the movie.
Right.
I'm going to go into a bit more detail about this guy versus Brian Peck, since this is a much lesser known situation, and is too well connected within the nexus of predators in film. He got his first big break in partnership with American Zoetrope, a joint venture between the revered Francis Ford Coppola, who is considered the godfather of mafia and military cinema, and George Lucas, who is responsible for Star Wars and co-creating the Indiana Jones franchise with Spielberg. They gave Salva $250,000 and lent him the video camera that was used to film American Graffiti, which was written by Lucas and directed by Coppola, to film his first horror flick called Clown House in 1989, starring Nathan Forrest Winters. He'd already been grooming Nathan during the creation of his earlier short film, Something in the Basement, in 1986, which Ford had loved, and is credited for awarding Salva with the funding and equipment. By the time they were filming Clown House, Salva was regularly keeping Nathan late on set, and having him overnight, and well, you get the picture. Salva was arrested and convicted for the several years' worth of crimes against Nathan, who was only 12 years old by the time of his arrest.
His grooming process was developing my love and trust, and developing my parents' trust. The first time that I remember there being any kind of touching or abuse, I was staying the night at his house, his apartment, and we were watching movies, and one of the movies he put on to watch was Jungle Book. He got two bandanas and tied them together and made this loincloth, and as he's tying them, he's like, me, and that's like my first memory of when the abuse started, and eventually it progressed over the next 5 years. Videotape all of it. I mean, it was full blown.
And was found in possession of much more illegally explicit material. He only served 15 months prison time. Coppola reportedly had told him that his time in prison would have value and make him a better artist. Sickeningly enough, in some ways it did, or at least bought him the time and gave the confined space with a routine and 3 square meals to write and think up new movie ideas. In spite of being a registered sex offender, Disney was happy to give him the funding to create and direct the film he literally wrote in prison.
When they found out, Nathan's family went to the police and Salva was convicted and jailed. But that hasn't affected his Hollywood career.
The neighbors talk about him like he's some kind of a phantom.
Powder, one of the scripts he wrote in prison, was distributed by Disney's Buena Vista Pictures.
Powder, released in 1995, produced by various offshoot companies, but distributed by Buena Vista Pictures, a subsidiary of Disney. Although Salva wasn't working directly or consistently with any kids for this film, there were many scenes shot in a school, and dozens of youths were used as extras.
He's been coddled completely by certain members of Hollywood, and big names in Hollywood have been backing him and throughout the entire process. It just seems like there's like an exclusive club, and Victor's a part of that club.
I've heard many stories of kids going to an agent who can control their career and put them into auditions. And so the agent's spending time alone with the child. They're able to sort of, unfortunately, get them away from parental supervision. And then they take advantage of these kids. And it's more common, I think, than we can even imagine.
Hollywood might not like talking about it, but it doesn't take a lot of digging to find even more examples of how it often has selective amnesia when it comes to some of the past behaviour of those it chooses to welcome into the fold.
When Nathan was protesting the film's release, Disney made a statement claiming they didn't know about his criminal history, but if anything, that just makes it worse. In Bug's case, if it wasn't by different people on these various sets, someone had to be pulling the strings that allowed them to all be in the same vicinity. When you look close enough, certain patterns do emerge. the same way certain actors, directors, and executives seem to have so many child stars that become troubled adults in their vicinity, who are self-medicating and getting themselves in all kinds of nonsense in their effort to escape the trauma of whatever had happened to them, or that they'd witnessed or been forced to partake in for the sake of a role.
As an adult, when I would meet other actors who I didn't even know of, but I found out they were child actors, there was always this kind of simpatico. There was always this kind of connection, an understood thing that was unspoken.
I mean, it's a trauma bond is what it is.
Yes. Yes, it is. It's a trauma bond. You're right. It's exactly what it is. You nailed it.
Yeah. And I think, like, the older I get, like we're talking about the hindsight, the more I realize what that all is and, like, how convenient it is. Okay. And this is going to sound a little cray-cray, but it's not. How convenient it is that there's not any data that secures like the knowledge of how the effects of this type of career in its most exploitive form, or in its at its most exploitive way, like how it really does meander into these people's lives as they grow up, and how it affects generations to come as well.
Bug went on to play Buster in The Stupids, released in 1996, which was directed by Spielberg's former longtime friend, Jonathan Landis.
Morning, Petunia. Morning, Buster. Hey, sis, have you seen Dad? Isn't he sleeping? No, and he's not outside either. I got up early to walk my fish, and he was already gone. Do you think maybe he's been kidnapped?
Their friendship was broken after a horrifying accident filming The Twilight Zone, when actor Vic Morrow and two child actors' lives were ended when a pyrotechnic stunt went wrong, a helicopter filming from above went haywire, and crashed onto the set where a scene was actively being filmed.
A helicopter crash near Magic Mountain today brought tragedy to the set of the Steven Spielberg movie, The Twilight Zone. Actor Vic Morrow and two small children were when the chopper came down as they were shooting a war scene. Rick DeReyes reports it happened early this morning.
The helicopter crashed just before 2:30 in the Indian Dunes Park as a Warner Brothers crew is about to wrap up filming for a story in the new Twilight Zone movie. The scene called for a nighttime bombing of a Vietnamese village in which actor Vic Morrow was supposed to pick up two Vietnamese children and run across the Santa Clara riverbed. Robert Gaynor was operating the camera crane at the time. He saw the chopper come into view.
The cameras rolled and the helicopter was hovering and was supposed to destroy the village. And Vic Morrow was supposed to run across the river with the two children to save them. And as the helicopter went out of control, he was running across the river, and the helicopter spun down into the river and met Vic Morrow, apparently, and the two children at the water level.
The crash tore the rotor blade from the chopper, killing Morrow, 6-year-old Renee Shin Chen of Pasadena, and 7-year-old Mai Ka Din Lee of Cerritos. There were 6 persons in the helicopter when it crashed, including director John Landis of Animal House fame. They were all taken to nearby Henry Mayo Newhall Memorial Hospital. Only 4 persons needed treatment. All were later released.
Twilight Zone director John Landis and 4 other production personnel were formally charged with involuntary manslaughter. Special effects expert Paul Stewart and pilot Dorsey Wingo were charged in the helicopter crash that took 3 lives. Associate producer George Folsey Jr. and production manager Dan Allingham were charged with illegally employing 2 children who were killed. Director John Landis was named in 5 counts.
Landis, of course, is charged in all counts because under our theory, we're alleging that he's responsible not only for bringing the children onto the set and alleging that he violated the misdemeanor, child endangering and child labor laws, but also that because of his direction, we're alleging that the stunts were conducted in a reckless manner.
It's had a profound impact on our lives. And I know in my head and I know in my heart that we did not cause this accident.
Landis and the 4 other Twilight Zone production personnel pleaded not guilty to all charges. All 5 were released on their own recognizance.
Bug later worked with the daughter of Vic, Jennifer Jason Lee, who was only 20 years old when this occurred, and she'd lost her father. Skipped Parts was released in the year 2000. And as you may know, was mentioned in my previous video about Misha Barton, who'd co-starred in this film alongside Bug and Jennifer, as well as the actor Brad Renfro.
They killed President Kennedy.
Are you sure?
It's on the news.
Who killed him?
Texans.
Y'all crying over ever?
Shut up, Dothan.
Hey, you know what all the kids are getting for Christmas this year? A Jack-in-the-Box. I never knew you cared.
Brad was plucked up out of a trailer park in Tennessee where he was being raised by his grandmother. It's been long suspected that something awful had happened in his youth, based on everything going on in his vicinity. He is also a very perfect example, like Bug, of someone who would have been more easily pressured, knowing where he could be, and from where he'd come from. Although there were never any allegations, convictions, or arrests to suggest he himself had the same horrific experiences at the hands of adults as kids like Drake Bell and Nathan Forrest had. After many legal and other struggles, he accidentally ended his own life at the age of 25 on January 15, 2008. Whether he had been directly exploited and taken advantage of or not, the plotline and scenes of films like Skipped Parts, where the roles each character played were disturbing and traumatizing in their own way, were likely a contributing factor that led to Bug and Misha's problems later in life, and what had driven Renfro to end his. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. The Stupids, directed by Spielberg's old pal Landis, portrays a stupid family who believes there's a conspiracy involving their garbage, but after following a garbage truck to the dump, they stumble upon an actual conspiracy.
My gosh, there must be thousands of people's garbage here. Tens of thousands even. Why, the sheer organization necessary to pull off a heist like this? I've uncovered the crime of the century.
Apparently it's based on a series of books, but the message this was intending to send was that most people believing conspiracies are stupid, and that only sometimes by sheer dumb luck, they stumble upon some dark truths.
How about nose? It's worth a try. All right, computer. Now tell us everything we need to know about Stanley. Stupid. Now hand me a photo of Dad and let's see what we can find out. It's processing the data.
What does it say?
Fatal error, drive B.
Oh my God!
What does it mean? I don't know.
We've got to warn your father.
Meanwhile, the director himself had a shady past of negligence, disregarding safety protocols, and willful ignorance of child labor laws, as neither of the two children on set were there legally. Children were not allowed to work at night, or be put in the center of stunts involving pyrotechnics. So it's not so hard to believe that the protection of children's innocence on set was also likely ignored and glazed over, especially since all parties involved in the careless stunt that ended 3 lives, including both Landis and Spielberg, got off pretty much scot-free, because, money. The difference for Bug between The Big Green and The Stupids was that The Big Green was filmed in his home state of Texas, while The Stupids was filmed in Canada, in areas around Toronto and the Greater Toronto area, primarily in a small township called Uxbridge. In the meantime, his younger brother Gemini had secured a role in the short-lived family television drama, Second Noah, which his mother Twyla chose to relocate their family to Florida to be closer to that set.
Oh, yeah, I'd rather eat rats. Come on, let's go, we're late. Watch behind your ears, Randy.
Once again leaving Bug at the mercy of the production team to take care of him, and now in a whole new country, where it would be all the more difficult for his mother to drop by the set in between everything else she was juggling.
Oh, my dad!
No!
Whoa!
I remember feeling very angry. I still remember really being consciously aware of the fact that, at least how I perceived it at the time, 8 years old, that somebody wasn't protecting me, that I was supposed to be protected.
Displacement that happens inherent to child actors in their family. So when you go to work on a set, you are taken out of your, typical nuclear family dynamic or whatever it is, which sometimes can be a lifesaver for some, like, you know, say Shia LaBeouf, who was my co-star in Even Stevens. In a lot of ways, him doing Even Stevens, like the set, as he's documented, was a safe space for him to get away from his dad, except that his dad, who was his abuser, became his chaperone on set. So he had to see him. I had to see him. It was just not a good situation. But overall, you know, it was a safer space for him to be there than home. And then, but in a lot of situations, these kids are moving from different states and they're leaving their family. Their siblings are, you know, my siblings lost their mom, and the father loses the wife, you know, and then you guys are this little team together, sort of alone and at risk and grouped up, and trying to, you know, make it rich, I guess you want to call it. So there is a displacement there. And then you as a child who's on set starts to create this false sense of family on a set.
Yep, absolutely.
So I can understand. Go for it.
You collect father figures, you collect mother figures, you collect siblings. You become a collector. And that was my experience very much. I mean, I used to, even before I was aware of all the brokenness of my psychology, I used to joke when I was 21 and in the deepest darkness of my life, I would joke that I'm a collector of fathers, right? It's just what I did.
I'm bigger than you.
Yes, most people are.
My pa's president of the United States.
I presume you're Tad Lincoln?
You're Tom Thumb.
Actually, my name is Charles Sherwood Stratton. Tom Thumb was P.T. Barnum's idea.
Don't you wish you were big?
Sometimes.
I hate being little. You can't really do anything. You just have to make believe.
But Tad, all you have to do is wait. And you'll grow big. And you can do all the things that big people can do.
I reckon so.
We started out with, of course, back when I had, the kids were little, 4 of them. 2 of my 4 kids, the 2 boys, Bug Hall, Barnett, and Gemini Barnett, broke into the industry and booked the Little Rascals. Bug was 8 and played the role of Alfalfa, and Gemini was 3 and booked Weezer. After that, it was a nonstop smorgasbord of Hollywood everything. Bug's career took off. Now, I'm not the sit around and read a book type. I loved coaching the kids, and it was working. They were, it was working. They were booking left and right. I really started delving into the human behavior, the art of acting, and I had a lot of experienced actors to learn from. As far as production goes, let's just say I got my hands dirty. Years of hands-on experience eventually catapulted me into a career of management, coaching and teaching.
Wow.
Now, while all this was going on, our little 3-year-old Gemini was not sitting back quietly. He demanded a little attention of his own, and Gemini's career was on the rise. Thank God I had my amazing sister and brother-in-law and husband to hold down the fort, helping with our daughter at Star and our son Dakota. It was really nice when both boys would land roles on the same set, and it made it a lot easier for everyone. So of course I stuck the kids together as much as I could on the same set, same parade, same charity event, for the lack of family time. I'm not gonna lie, although it was exciting, it was hard on everyone, and we were all, such a close family. I had to teach our kids how to cope with many things at such a young age, and to learn ourselves what to pick and choose at the right times, prioritize to say no to the glamour of Hollywood, not wanting to leave our youngest to feeling left out. I included him in a lot of charity work because Dakota really latched on to singing. Once he was comfortable, he dabbled a little in acting as well. There's me and my daughter Star, me and Gemini and Dakota, and there I am with Bug.
Awesome, awesome, Twilight. So it became a family affair, didn't it?
Yes,
Everyone
it did.
in the family got involved to some degree, and
Yes.
some are more involved than others. Bug's heavily involved,
Right,
isn't
just
he?
really trying not to exclude, the family members, trying to include everybody in our activities.
And that's so good that they want it to be included, and they're all talented and gifted in some area of the industry. So I know that has to be a blessing that you can share that passion with your family.
Yeah. I'm more blessed that they all turned out normal. After, living in Hollywood.
Yeah, well, awesome.
In 1998, both he and his brother Gemini were cast in the family sitcom called Kelly Kelly. For whatever reason, this too was short-lived, and it seems that although Gemini was just as capable and talented as Bug in his performances, he couldn't catch a big break. Which makes me wonder if his having too much family involvement was a detriment to his career. Having a more solid and complete family foundation, more supervision and protection, maybe it was as simple as him having the confidence to say no. Versus Bug, who had been predisposed and therefore more vulnerable. They were obviously all being shopped around in the same sphere. It's hard not to suspect there were darker reasons why Bug was able to excel, and Gemini wasn't, while hitting all the right benchmarks. It also seems like someone went out of their way to erase him from Hollywood history. He'd done the entire talk show and interview circuit. He'd appeared on Jay Leno 3 times between 1996 and 1998. That's prime time, and yet there is zero video evidence that remains. These images are basically it. He'd even secured a small supporting role in Adam Sandler's The Wedding Singer, released in 1998. We know that any kids that work with Sandler go on to have great success.
The fact is, we grew apart a long time ago. You just wanted to get married so badly you didn't care to who.
That's not true. I love you. Come here. I'll spend the rest of my life with you.
Hey, Linda! You're a bitch!
The Sprouse twins, for example, after Big Daddy in 1995, were able to have a pretty sweet life, working with Disney with The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, first airing March 18, 2005, and with plenty of spin-offs and films to follow.
I don't want to go. I promise, I'm sorry, I don't even like that song anymore.
I know, pal. That's not it.
But I want my own ass. I want my own ass.
I know.
Sure, they had a starring role versus Gemini's small supporting scene, but it was classic. For his age and the amount of connections his mother had with her own work within the industry, plus Bug, so what exactly happened there, I wonder? He then goes on to talk about how as he got older, he started hanging out with a rougher crowd, people smoking and drinking, biker types, which was his own way of protecting himself.
But eventually I did what I think all children who are victims of abuse, or I guess any kind of abuse, what I've noticed, the pattern that I've noticed is that they tend to find some sort of alt group of some sort, a group that looks dangerous, a group that's welcoming to anyone. It's kind of like those poisonous lizards in the Amazon, right? You know, the bright colors to warn people to let the other animals know they're dangerous. And I think that's a very common thing. That's just my observation. So for me, for some people it's the goth or the punk rock or the metal groups or whatever. For me, it was kind of I started hanging around with the crew. A lot of these guys are sort of old biker guys, and I just kind of gravitated in that direction.
He fondly recalls working with Brad on skipped parts, saying that he really looked up to him and aspired to be like him, that it seemed like nobody messed with him or really told him what to do, but it would become much clearer to Bug that he and Brad had a lot more in common than he realized when he'd passed so unexpectedly, and at such a young age.
I did a movie with Brad Renfro when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I had up to that point really just been living that kind of duck and dodge sense of fear without realizing it, because it's, you know, it's normal to you, right? Like, it is your stasis, so you don't have any context.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met Brad, I immediately just wanted to be him. Like, nobody messed with Brad. Producers didn't tell Brad what to do. Nobody told Brad what to do. Nobody could hurt Brad. He became the greatest, coolest, toughest, safest person in the world to me. And he took me under his wing very much so, and we would go fishing, and, you know, we would just go run around and get into trouble together. And I just wanted to be like Brad, and I realized that whatever it is that he does protects him, you know. And this is subconscious, obviously. This is all hindsight that you have to kind of dig through and find those moments. But that was the exact moment for me. That was the switch that went off, and I dove into, you know, tough guy, motorcycle riding, you know, drinking, drugging, womanizing, all the things that
Hollywood.
all the things, yeah, all the things that are representative of what our culture views as a tough person,
Masculine.
tough man, right? Masculine, which is ironic, because the lack of discipline in it all is the exact opposite of masculinity, right? A masculine man is a man who has disciplined himself, and who has himself in check, and who is in control of himself.
In some ways, this, and I'm sure the numerous other lost young souls that had been in the same vicinity, within the same sphere of certain companies and people, and just within the industry as a whole, it was able to scare Bug straight, and he more or less kept himself out of trouble until his arrest in 2020.
So Brad Renfro, and unfortunately, Brad, it did not end well with Brad. And I remember him being a huge light that burnt out way too soon in life. So did you see that kind of, were you hanging around him when that all went down? And
no, we had, you know, I was quite a few years younger than him.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we worked together, we were very, very close. And, you know, growing up, I now look back and see that he put in a great effort for his state in life and his maturity level to kind of keep in contact with me, you know, since I saw him as a big brother. He definitely took some sense of responsibility in that, and made sure to try to, you know, stay in touch here or there. But we weren't really going to be running in the same circles. And so we fell out of touch. I found out like everyone else did, except that I was coming out of a bad blackout hangover and turned the news on and saw the news. It was one of the hardest days of my life. Even not having been in close contact with him for a few years, it was still a tough one. It was a bright light, like you said. That
For those of you that have seen the Misha video, some of this may sound a bit repetitive, but I purposely did not go so far into the details in that video, nor will I in this one, because he does deserve his own video at some point. I will mention, though, that it was Molly Finn who brought Renfro into the business around the age of 10, and she's the same casting director who'd happened to discover Edward Furlong, in a very similar fashion only a couple years prior, for director Joel Schumacher's The Client in 1994. She had cast Furlong for director James Cameron for Terminator 2 in 1991.
And I thought she was so weird, because she just stared at me and smiled at me, and I'm just like, yeah.
And I walked over to him, and he was snarling.
He began being fairly openly pursued by a much older woman, starting from when he was only 13 years old, and she was 26. They entered a formal relationship, and he moved in with her when he turned 16. I covered his story in the video just before Misha's, if you're interested. Not accusing Finn of any wrongdoing directly, but the patterns cannot go unnoticed.
Joel Schumacher said that when he was trying to cast your role, Mark, that he just set out to look for a tough kid. Are you a tough kid?
to an extent, you know.
Get in fights or what?
I used to, you know, get in fights. But, you know, after so many fights, you don't have to get in fights. You know, you've got a reputation, which seems cool at the time, but it's not good. Which is why, you know, this movie, you know, changed my life a lot.
You look at things differently now?
I look at things from an artistic point of view now, instead of this is life, you know? Because, you know, art and acting and, you know, is a way to escape.
In an interview with The Vulture in June of 2020, Joel spoke about his early introduction to adulthood, with both men and women much older than he, and asserts he never felt abused. Not accusing Joel specifically of any wrongdoing either, but giving adults with this kind of mindset access to an infinite amount of troubled kids might be part of the problem.
Drew made a rare foray into television to star in 2000 Malibu Road, a nighttime soap directed by Joel Schumacher. Joel recalls the first time he met Drew.
I was sitting in a restaurant in Beverly Hills and with my friends, and there was a tug at my sleeve, and this, you know, exquisite 8 or 9 year old child was standing there, and it was Drew Barrymore, and she said, "Hi, I love your movie. I've seen it 50 times and I know every word." And I was so undone by this beautiful child. So we've stayed kind of friendly, and so I was able to call her up and ask her to be in the show.
Do you think that it's Hollywood, it's like a prerequisite? Like you hear all these stories of, you know, like rampant degeneracy and whatever. We won't go into what people know what that means, but and all, like, do you think it's a prerequisite for people to make it in Hollywood? You need to adapt to this lifestyle? Or is it like something that once you get this power and fame that people, they're bored or they're exploring, or I don't know another word to use for it.
I think that the industry itself draws a certain type of person for the most part. I think it's just, you know, because even some of the best people I've known out there really have trouble making the right decisions when the time comes, right? Because what's interesting about the entertainment industry is it touches on every vice, right? If you're a prideful, you want power, you want money, all the things you could be attached to, right? There's something for everyone. You can get all of it. You know, fame, and I mean it's just drenched in that vice. So I think it draws that crowd to begin with. I also think that its foundations were rotten. You know, if you really dig into the history of Hollywood, how it came about, especially what happened in the 40s and 50s to Hollywood, like there's a foundational rot that it never grew out of. It's just part of the culture. It's always been part of the culture. As social norms shift and change, various things sort of become okay, and various things get buried deeper. And that's the interplay, I think, in Hollywood, but it doesn't ever really change. The whole Me Too movement,
right?
Nothing changed in Hollywood. It just got pushed to the side, and it's talked about differently, or you don't discuss that, or you know, you do things people are doing things in a different way, I'm sure, but nothing really changes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the rot, you said, like Charlie Chaplin, you know, didn't he have like child brides? And they would, was it Shirley Temple? They like have her sit like on a block of ice and like this crazy stuff that today you'd be, and you're right. What changed? Like there was no major shift in Hollywood.
This brings us to skipped parts, where a now barely 16-year-old Bug is cast in a coming-of-age drama centered around a teenage pregnancy that results from the encouraged exploration between Bug and Misha's characters.
Now, 2 things. You two go ahead and play your little boy or girl games, but the first sign of a period in Mari and the game stops.
What's a period?
Number 2. It's a matter of fun. You don't talk like this in front of animals. At your age, sex is something you run around and hide.
Why?
Well, society'd fall apart if people were honest about screwing.
Sam, let's go to your room and read comic books.
Yeah, comic books sound fun.
Oh, I did a bad thing.
What Bug and Misha were made to do in front of and to each other, while surrounded by a film crew, was extremely inappropriate, even for back then. The scenes Misha had with Renfro were questionable as well, with he being nearly 20 at the time, and she still in her mid-teens.
Well, you'll have to take out your gum.
But I just bought it.
Suit yourself.
Director Tamara Davis had also cast Drew Barrymore, who was in her late 20s at the time, as Bug's character's fantasy. Why were so many films and TV shows so hyper-focused on normalizing teen relationships with adults in their mid to late 20s, or much older, between the 80s and going into the 2000s?
You're home, Sam. Do you want to come in? Lydia got some new records.
No thanks, I'll just have Dothan take me on home.
Drew had been cast in a film called Poison Ivy in 1992, when she was around the same age Misha and Bug were for Skipped Parts, in which she was engaged in a torrid love affair with her friend's father, played by Tom Skerritt, who at the time was almost 60 years old. So for Drew, perhaps the age gaps she was witnessing for Skipped Parts didn't seem so bad. Not that it makes any of it okay, it only highlights how normalized it was. She too had her share of gritty roles with mature themes, including the other films she and Tamara Davis previously worked on together, Gun Crazy, and Tamara's directorial debut.
Every man I've ever known since I was 9 has wanted the same thing off me. And you not wanting it just makes me love you more.
Where Drew played a young teen who becomes enamored by a much older man and fell in awaiting release from prison. They later go on the run together after he accompanies her to help her dispose of her stepfather's body, whose life she took just before the two met up, thus contributing to the laundry list of Drew's roles she was given as a teen and young adult that leveraged and exploited her very deep and personal father wounds. Not to say her own father had abused her, but that statistically, his absence was partially to blame for how easily she was misled and taken advantage of in her youth. The same could be said for both Bug, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and Brad Renfro, who had no parents looking out for him. Though set in Wyoming, this film was once again filmed in Canada, but this time Saskatchewan. Why exactly do they film in small-town Canada and call it small-town United States, if not for wanting to get certain kids or vulnerable people far and away from home, and or from their support systems? Since not everyone can just drop everything and accompany their child cross-border for weeks or months at a time, and be as present as they could be if the location was within driving distance. Was the real Wyoming reserved? Once again, I'm not necessarily saying that anything bad had happened behind the scenes to any of the kids in this movie that wasn't already happening on set, but it kind of seems like a lot of obscure movies with strange plot lines involving children are filmed across the border or overseas. I think there are some other tax-related and other benefits depending on where they film, but we've got to start asking questions about what's actually necessary and what's just opportunistic. He starred in the Disney Channel original movie, Get a Clue, in 2002, alongside Lindsay Lohan and Brenda Song, where a group of students led by amateur journalist Lexi, played by Lindsay, and school paper editor, played by Bug, take the case of their missing teacher into their own hands.
That was, some honor.
Oh, you saw it?
Yeah. Hedda Hopper had nothing on you.
Hedda who?
And you call yourself a writer. You should know. She was the most famous gossip columnist ever.
I am not a gossip columnist. I give advice in the school paper, and the article in the Daily Examiner is a human interest piece.
Right. Shortest.
All right, so what's your secret?
If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret now, would it, Gabe?
Oh, come on, you get that shot of Mr. Walker. He won't even allow his picture in the yearbook.
You know what they say, a good reporter is always on the job. Hi, Gabe.
Hey, Jennifer.
Bye, Gabe.
Next was Arizona Summer, released in 2004, which was considered a modern-day Tom Sawyer story, taking place at a camp for kids.
All right. Listen, don't let Mike get to you.
Mike is not getting to me. He's not getting to me. If anything, you're getting to me, okay?
Really? See, because I got the feeling if you knew a little Taekwondo, you might have stayed at the dance just a little bit longer. Watch me. Show you some moves. In the knees. All right? Huh?
Bug's younger brother Gemini had the lead role as Brent, a yo-yo amateur going to summer camp for the first time, where his older brother went as a kid and is now a counselor.
What's a saguaro? A saguaro is that big, tall cactus that has all arms. And you know what? Arizona is the only state where it grows.
So that makes it kind of special, huh?
Yeah, I guess it does. Kind of special, just like you. You keep practicing, you're gonna teach all those kids a few tricks.
Okay.
I have some theories based on some patterns I've noticed about the Tom Sawyer films that I won't get into.
You're back. Well, where'd you go? Where you been?
Well, I'm a traveler. I go lots of places. Go upriver, downriver, no place particular. I'm bound to pass through here sometime.
This new age spin on Tom and Huckleberry Finn was directed by Joey Travolta, John Travolta's older brother, filmed in Arizona, mainly at Saguaro Lake Ranch, and in and around Prescott. I couldn't find much out about the production. There were no interviews or promotional segments, which strikes me as odd. Not much info to be gathered about Saguaro Lake and surrounding area either, aside from there being a fair amount of fatal accidents on and around the lake, and an alarming number of crimes against children in the area, despite being fairly small and remote. I don't know why exactly, but my gut is telling me there was something strange going on here. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole now, but if I were going to, I'd start with looking closer at Fort Whipple, the military base stationed near Prescott, and seeing if there were any historical tunnel systems in the area. This was also the film where he'd first worked alongside David Henry.
I go by Bad. You three are gonna be on my side, okay?
Sure, Bad.
And his younger brother Lorenzo Henry.
Come quick, get the knife! Snake.
With whom he would go on to produce the film This Is the Year, and the Netflix show Bug had helped develop, but we'll circle back to that. Switching it up in 2005, he'd appeared in a zombie horror movie called Mortuary. Not much that stood out to me about it, other than it being such a stark contrast to his prior film roles.
Excuse me? Could I get an application? You know what? You have a good arm. I'll tell you what, stop by tomorrow. We'll give it a try. You like it, I like you. The job's yours. Great, okay. Groovy then. Thanks.
Hey there.
I'm Jonathan Doyle. I just moved here. So?
In 2006, wanting to get back closer to family, Twyla and Bug's younger siblings moved back to Texas. Twyla then opened her own child acting academy in Weatherford, Texas, which included training in stunts and other areas of practices to prepare for films. Gemini slowly stepped back from acting, taking more of an interest in stunt preparation and training. He later became the stunt coordinator for his mother's academy. Through the mid to late 2000s to 2020, Bug had appeared in countless television shows, including CSI, and even an episode of The OC in Season 3. 2014 was the 20th anniversary of the Little Rascals, and Bug did join the other former cast in the usual reunion tour with the Where Are They Now and other celebratory segments, in spite of what he had experienced during filming.
Every moment of that movie was so locked in, I think, to our memories. Just because, like I said earlier, it was such a big experience. It was our first big experience, I think, for all of us, right? I mean,
Yeah,
pretty much. So,
even 20 years later, not having seen each other in so long, it felt like it was yesterday.
For Bug Hall, now 29, it was an emotional trip down memory lane.
And when I grow up, I'm gonna be a producer.
You are?
Yeah. So that way, since I'm a producer, I can be a director, I can be an actor,
You can
and
be
I can
whatever
be a
you want.
stuntman, and the producer.
When you get older and you realize that we are part of a lot of people's nostalgia, that's a powerful thing.
After all, he still valued the experience of making the film and never let his haunting past stop him from doing what he loved. He also understands the cultural impact of the film and how much it meant to so many people growing up, and of course didn't want to let them down. He hadn't sacrificed his own childhood for nothing.
It was when I got older and I really started realizing the strong nostalgic aspect that movie has on people. And I just realized how cool it was to be part of people's nostalgia. Even really early on, as soon as I recognized it, I just thought it was really neat, man. And regardless of, my circumstances and whatever else, I really do have fond memories of that movie. The movie itself, I love the joy that people get out of it. And I love meeting people and they get excited and I get just excited about it. So,
as the proverbial cherry on top, the Little Rascals reboot titled The Little Rascals Save the Day aligned with this 20th anniversary, and Bug had a cameo role as the ice cream man.
All right, boys and girls, I have a little surprise. We're not going to do any more work today. Instead, we're going to have an end-of-the-year party with a great big ice cream cake.
Yay! No, Crunchy. I think our folks can wait a little while. Yeah, my mom's had babies before. I'm sure she knows what to do. My daddy isn't going anywhere. He can't. His legs are broke.
Oh, no. You can't keep your families waiting just for a party. Now run along, and I will see you next fall.
Run along. See you next fall. She's had him before.
Oh. Kids don't know what you're missing. What's cake?
In a now deleted scene, Bug looks at the teacher and says something along the lines of, "Reminds me of me when I was a kid," which would have been perfect, so I'm not sure why they didn't keep it. Though this revisiting of his past likely brought up some painful memories for Bug. And looking back on how small and defenseless he really was, it must have been gut-wrenching, but he managed to stay the course. He'd also taken roles in some independent and straight-to-video movies that would air on TV. Although he'd begun distancing himself from the noise, and had settled down in 2017, when he and Jill Marie DeGroff became wed, there was trouble brewing behind the scenes. Now having the roles switched, with he being the father, and getting a whole new perspective of his own childhood trauma, he begun feeling compelled to escape. He'd started behaving erratically, became secretive, and was distancing himself from himself and his family as much as he could. In the summer of 2020, when his close friends and family were unable to make contact while he was holed up in a hotel room by himself, police were called to do a welfare check. When they arrived, it was apparent he'd been huffing air dusters, and empty cans could be observed scattered all over the room. Bug was arrested on June 20th, 2020, and now at 35 years old, and with his past rapidly catching up to him, he needed to confront it head on, which of course had led to him taking some time off to reflect, seek additional support, and then post his testimonial video. Oddly enough, Aaron Carter had also taken to huffing before his tragic and untimely death in November of 2022. Drake Bell was caught huffing in his car only a month later.
I want. Hey. No, hey, wait. Can we get a close up of this? Can you get a close up of this one? No.
You go, boy. Just thing, my jig, and
okay.
then you thingy about the jig, and then you spit right there, and then you blast stuff.
What do you think of that explanation?
Oh, it was very explanatory. How much did it cost?
It's only $99.99.
Oh my goodness!
The very last film he appeared in, he had helped co-write the screenplay with director David Henry, co-produced by Bug's Company and Selena Gomez, called This Is the Year, an American teen coming-of-age comedy drama released in the summer of 2020. In a final bid to impress the girl of his dreams, a shy high school senior and his best friends hit the road for the biggest music festival of the year, only to find that love has its own unexpected rhythm. Seemed like a pretty wholesome family movie, and a good final note to retire from the film business for Bug.
Yeah, no, she needs work, but trust me, she's a gem. You can fix that, right? So I'm thinking about names. The Millennium Falcon.
The reason that I chose this project in particular and was very passionate about it is because it's something that I felt teens really needed and I felt hadn't been seen in a long time. Movies that really influenced me growing up were like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I liked a lot of John Hughes movies, and I felt like we haven't seen a real sort of meaningful teen movie in a very long time. So it was my goal to try to bring to a new generation a teen movie that really meant something to them. I think what a lot of the 80s coming-of-age movies did well is they meant something to that demographic, and there was and it means something to future generations too. It's kind of timeless how they executed it.
But in the spirit of change, we wanted to let our fans in on the premiere experience and watch the movie with us for the first time and the cast. So we're so excited to have you guys with us.
So true. Okay, maybe we should tell everyone why we're here teaming up again and why this movie matters.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. So I've always been a fan of those iconic feel-good teen coming-of-age movies. So with our movie, This Is the Year, I wanted to capture that spirit, but in a more modern way. And it's always been my goal to use art to uplift and feel good, which I think is more relevant now more than ever. So I hope this film does that and means that to you. And I couldn't be more excited to team up with you again, Selena, after all these years.
So happy.
It's amazing, and I knew if we're ever gonna make a little more magic, it would have to be special and meaningful, and I think this film and the timing is just that. You know,
So I really responded to how this movie deals with change. Each one of these characters are barreling towards the end of high school, and the one thing they all have in common is that they're all in the midst of serious change, which I feel is very relatable and relevant to the time that we're in now.
Absolutely.
He had helped with the creative development and served as an executive producer on the Netflix limited series A Tale Dark and Grim in 2021, an animated retelling of the darker side of fairy tales based on the work of the Brothers Grimm. After fully removing himself from Hollywood, Bug took a vow of poverty, became what I guess we'd call a homesteader, and although he's done a handful of podcasts, he's mostly kept to himself.
In that video, I mentioned that I was going to go off, I'll go off and, I don't know, buy a farm somewhere and disappear. Well, I did buy a farm. I didn't disappear. I've decided to add a detail to this new adventure, and that is that we're going to embrace a life of poverty. And in today's society, that sounds crazy. Poverty is something to be eradicated, to be gotten rid of. It's a disease. But I think that's because we're the wealthiest society in the history of man. We're the most comfortable by a long shot. The average person today lives far more comfortably than most kings throughout history. And we really abhor poverty. And I think we're missing something important. I think it's a big part of all the problems that we have. And you know what they are as well as I do. And maybe we all disagree on what those problems are, but we know that there's problems. And I think it's because we are so comfortable and we don't want to lose that. I think that's deep down, that's all of our biggest fear is to lose comfort, to lose our pleasures.
But why would he suddenly quit when it seemed like everything he dreamed of doing was becoming a reality? With developing and producing his own projects, as his younger self had prophesized for himself all those years ago.
We're fighting a clandestine war. This is the narrative that I was told. We're fighting this clandestine war. Everyone in Hollywood is our enemy, and if they knew who we were, or what we thought, or what we believed, we'd be out. And how can we do any good if we're out, right? If we're cast out of Hollywood, we can't do any good. And I had kind of experienced that. I'd had to turn down a few jobs because I no longer wanted to, get naked on screen or, do different things that were in conflict with my conscience. And I was okay with that. People go make the movies they want to make, and if my talents and my ability to, to do the job doesn't match up with what they need, then, it's not the job for me. But I was excited to move into this new phase and to, be writing and doing these other things. And I also did, I did a few jobs acting-wise along the way. I was in Romania for a few months. But this narrative, this idea that we shouldn't talk about our faith, we shouldn't talk about what we believe, I really bought it hook, line, and sinker. And the reality is I saw that contention growing, right, in the industry around me. More and more, I started noticing that nobody with what you might call traditional values speaks out in any way. Whereas the, let's call them the new value system, right? The values that have sort of cropped up over the last 70 years, 60 years. Those are spoken about and expressed and promoted with impunity. They're, it's just taken for granted that, you can say those things. And that was a difficult thing for me to navigate, and I wasn't happy with it or comfortable with it. Something was irking me about this, and these people that I was working with, kept that narrative up. Clever as foxes, innocent as doves. We're fighting a clandestine war. Yes, we believe all these things, but we can't tell anyone.
He then goes on to speak about his final breaking point and what had ultimately led to him choosing to leave Hollywood and retire for good.
Ultimately, you have to think less of someone to be able to lie to them. That should be self-evident. And lies come in the form of silence sometimes too, right? Sins of omission. So as I watched these people defraud people and lie and cheat, and I was growing resentful. And resentment is, as anyone that deals with substance abuse or alcoholism, resentment is pretty much the death of your sobriety. Once that resentment starts brewing, you've already really relapsed, and so it was this resentment that had led to the first one and the second one, and I hadn't caught it. I wasn't aware of it. And it wasn't until these people knowingly invited a convicted child to a movie set full of minors, full of children, that it just clicked with me that these people are liars. This child was a potential investor, and it was a night shoot, and there were literally hundreds of children on set, and they knew exactly who he was. And even then, I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything about it, and I became very angry. So that anger went on for a good year. I still didn't act on it. I just festered. And eventually they, for quite a while, they had been defrauding me of my wages and asking me to tear up contracts and for deferred pay and all these different things. And I eventually realized it didn't have anything to do with this clandestine war or, waiting until we're Marky Mark or Mel Gibson, and then we can come out and tell the truth and do these things and fight for good causes. It just had to do with money and status. That's what they wanted. And no matter how far you get in life in regards to money and status, there's always more you can get.
Now, I can't say for 100% sure who exactly he's referring to here, but I do believe he's talking about working with David Henry and referring to the night footage shot for This Is the Year, where it ends with a concert and there's hundreds of kids and young teens as extras and in supporting roles. David is a devout Roman Catholic, same as Bug, and from what he describes about the people he'd worked with that had turned him off to Hollywood for good, He was sure they'd shared the same religious views and ideals. David had not had any meaningful or notable work in the industry since around 2015, with This Is the Year being his big debut as a director, and with the starring role going to his younger brother Lorenzo. If he had then weaseled his way into having Bug destroy a contract that left him without proper compensation, by who I'm sure he'd considered a friend of nearly 20 years, should have likely been enough for him to walk away. But to be forced into compromising your morals and values, and when it comes to children no less, I can see why that would be his final straw. He'd also been working with Henry on A Tale Dark and Grim, and it does add more context to why he abruptly cancelled the project and left the production. The live premiere for This Is the Year was slated for August of 2020, and his arrest had been just prior to. He most definitely sounded like he was talking about people he'd most recently worked and developed projects with, but if not, then I'll be damned. I'm not exactly sure who the convicted predator would be, but I should also point out that the other producer of This Is the Year, Leo Severino, was publicly criticized for having met his wife while he was her 39-year-old youth pastor, and she was still in high school.
And I realized that I had been lied to. I realized that none of this had anything to do with niceness or a clandestine war, building the idea that all of these various people that we were working with, all our different relationships, that they were, these sort of secret enemies, right? And us versus them mentality. Building one monolith out of everyone on the other side, a Leviathan to fight. I realized that that wasn't true in this context. But here's the catch. The resentment continued. As I went on and decided to try and do my own thing, the resentment continued. The relapses had increased in 6 years. It ended up being 6 relapses, and they were getting closer together. Now, after all this time of thinking about it and really meditating on it and figuring out what happened, I realized that I was the problem. It didn't have anything to do with these people. It had to do with my own silence and my own cowardice. The line between good and evil runs down the center of every human heart. And when you don't accept that, you don't face that, you scapegoat. I think that's where that piece about remove the mote from your own eye before worrying about the splinter in your brother's. I think that's really a warning, more than it is a practical teaching. I think it's just kind of a warning. What happens when you don't do that? Well, you grow resentful and you scapegoat. I should have spoken truthfully.
I do want to point out some other interesting Disney lore involving both David and Selena. David had appeared in 12 episodes of That's So Raven between 2004 and 2007. He had the recurring role of Justin Russo on The Wizards of Waverly Place, alongside Selena Gomez and Jake T. Austin in 2007 to 2012.
Afternoon, Alex. Other Alex. You're both clearly up to no good.
David and Waverly siblings appeared in a crossover episode with The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody in the Disney original Dadnapped and The Wizards of Waverly Place movie, both aired in 2009. After the success of This Is the Year and other more notable work by Henry, they rebooted Wizards of Waverly Place in 2024, and he served as an executive producer, but while remaining under the original Disney production company, It's a Laugh.
Yes!
The specific company which had hired on registered offender from Nickelodeon, Brian Peck, after he was released from prison, to work with the young cast of The Sweet Life. It's a Laugh was responsible for all of the above-mentioned Disney original series, not saying David Henry, Selena Gomez, or anyone that had worked closely to Bug, and with Disney, are guilty of any wrongdoing directly unless otherwise decided by the court of law. But all these young stars grew up surrounded by predators, and to go on to invite a convicted offender to a set with children, as Bug had alleged, would be quite the betrayal to their friends and peers who were victimized. On one final note to do with that, I will mention that David's directorial follow-up in 2024 was a kids' horror adventure film called Monster Summer and was released exactly 20 years after Arizona Summer. Both premiered in September. I noticed that after I said something felt not right in my gut about Arizona Summer, so that could be all. But if you still end up digging deeper and finding anything, I'll be very interested to hear it. Now, I'm still anything in particular about anybody specifically. But do you see who had a starring role in this film? It's not Marky Mark.
You okay, bud?
It didn't have anything to do with this clandestine war or, waiting until we're Marky Mark or Mel Gibson, and then we can come out and tell the truth and do these things and fight for good causes. It just had to do with money and status.
He has been criticized for his extremely religious, outdated, and sexist tweets, where at one point he refers to his son as his heir and his daughters as little dishwashers. Now, I'm not exactly sure of the entire context. He could have been joking, but it definitely didn't land right. For basically living an Amish lifestyle and having embraced an antiquated belief system, I guess it comes with the territory. If that's the worst of what he's done since his arrest, I still consider it a success story. Seems he and his family enjoy a pretty wholesome and slow-paced life, and as long as they're all happy, it's not really our business.
Yeah, we have some dark humor, the child actors, that aren't fully fun.
Yeah, I talk for it all the time. They're like, with everything you've been through, with everything you experienced, how could you talk like that? And I go, I have to. I mean, I can kind of make a joke about just about anything. I don't think there's any horror. I keep most of that private, right? Because it certainly bothers people. But humor is a gift. And humor can see you through quite a lot of darkness. And I just got away with my family and spent like 6 months just thinking about what was going on with me, how I ended up here. I really revisited some stuff from my childhood that I thought I had I really genuinely thought I had grappled with it correctly and had contended with it. And I finally made the really hard decision. I don't want to be in the entertainment business at all anymore. And I had no idea what that meant. Over the next year, I slowly formed a concept of basically just living a very old-fashioned life of just providing for myself. We've got cows and goats and chickens and a whole little farm here. We're on 3 acres, but we've got enough grass to feed 3 people. And basically, basically that's it. So now that's what I do. Every once in a while, someone will call me and ask me for help on this or that, and I'll, so like I've done 2 or 3 of those little things for people, but I do it free of charge. I say I'm not in the business anymore. I'm retired. I won't take any money, but I'll just help you out. And that's it, man. I spend every day with my kids. We work together all day. We pray. We play. I've grown really fond of just playing with my kids, man. Like that's what I love more than anything. And we get to do it all day. Like that's basically my job now.
Dude, you brought up like it's amazing, like the transformation that you've made. You've seen things that don't my show's about like conspiracies, and Hollywood often comes up a lot, and childhood actors. Mm-hmm. And you escaped like this world that is just filled with so much evil stuff. Like, and it's crazy to see the end that you came out of it, and very few people do.
You know what's funny, man, is I've spent a lot of time digging a lot deeper on all that than I did before. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that was most difficult for me, I think the thing that was just always, it was a constant breaking of my heart over and over, was knowing all the people that didn't make it out, right? It's like, it's in a weird way, it's kind of like that, that war guilt that they talk about, like the guys that make it home safe.
Right.
I think there was a lot of that going on. Like, I knew a lot of people who I'm certain had a lot of the same experiences I had, and they didn't make it. They overdosed, they died, they, they're in loony bins, they're, just total wrecks, right? And there's not much you can do for those people, even the ones that are still here, but they're just total wrecks. Like, until you're ready to just buckle down and face that thing, like there's nothing you can do for them. But it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see these women come out there and you just get, just run over, man.
I remember the kind of frenzy that happens with those moments in time as we were children. Like I think time slows down for you because your adrenaline is so high, and even at that young age that these stakes are adult stakes that you are now a part of. And it's not natural. It's not, there's no way of them being able to do that. That's not, in my opinion, traumatizing.
It actually is, it is a form of trauma. I mean, that's actually what forms. Being in any sort of waiting to perform type scenario, even if I perceive that and it's not real, I get an adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
I go into, mild dissociative experiences. I mean, that's what it is. That's what's built into us.
Todd Bridges, who starred in one of the 70s biggest sitcoms, was arrested by his publicist.
I'm one of the few children, that have, got rid of it and still around. Most of my proteges have died or committed suicide or OD'd, because they couldn't get over it and stuff that happened to them.
Corey Feldman and Corey Haim were two of the biggest child stars of the 80s.
I know that there's thousands others that have experienced what I've experienced in the entertainment industry. I also know that there's peers of mine who know exactly what I'm talking about and know all the details, but have been afraid to come forward with their own truths.
For the first time since that first day on Little Rascals, for the first time since then, I don't know what I'm going to do for a living. And that's very scary. But it's also exciting, liberating in a lot of ways. So, if any of you have any ideas, let me know. I want to end with a story because I talked a little bit about the abuse that I experienced and the horrors of that. And when you're a kid, you learn to stop thinking about it. But when you're a kid, you think about it. And how you feel is really hard to express even after coping with it and forgiving. And through my years as a child actor and into my teens, there were a few other child actors who did open up and talk about their experiences as well. One of them in particular overdosed he was one of my best friends. He overdosed when he died when he was 25, I think, 27. And it's a big problem. I think it's a bigger problem than the problem behind the Me Too movement and all of the evils of the casting couch culture. Now, I don't want this to get conflated with the QAnon thing, because I think that has done more of a disservice to raising awareness of this problem. And I think it's strange, though, that it's, there were a few times over the years that I wanted to express this part of my history and my past and to see if I could find a way to right some wrongs, First of all, I've worked to reconstruct those memories, and I have a deep fear of the wrong person ever being accused, and I don't have a clear enough memory from any of the events from my childhood to definitively point to any particular person. I've gone through IMDb and I've tried to reconstruct the truth around all of my horrible experiences, But if even one wrong person were accused, that would be unbearable for me. So before anyone goes and says, well, why aren't you going to the police or whatever, that's why. And if that ever changes, if I ever suddenly become crystal clear on any of these predators or who any single one of them were, rest assured I'll have no problem taking that step. But I think it's strange that it's still a subject that is, it looks to me like it's a subject that's kind of mildly mocked, when Corey Feldman, who I worked with, when he opened up and talked a little bit about what happened to him, and quite a few child actors have actually come out and said things, and it just tends to get brushed under the rug. It's in the media for a day and then it's gone, and I think that's, I don't know what that means. I think that's a problem. I think that's a problem, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a taboo subject that makes people uncomfortable. I don't know if it's because the percentage of people who are aware of it is a high percentage, kind of like the casting couch culture in Hollywood. It was just universally known. I mean, when I was 18, I remember people talking about Kevin Spacey and his problems, right? So I mean, like, I would like to see an awareness of this issue become an acceptable narrative. I would like to see people coming out and talking about it. I don't know what to do beyond this video. Maybe something will come to me. I don't know.
Make of all of that what you will. Until next time, keep your eyes open wide, and I'll catch you on the flip side.